Good morning. Good morning. My name is Elaine Faithful. I am your worship associate today, and I'm a member of the UUFC Board of Directors. I have several announcements that I want to make this morning because we don't have anything on the back of the order of service, and we're going to feel lost without it. At least I am. The upcoming events are next Sunday. Will be the blessing of the animals. I encourage you, and so does Christina, to bring your little ones, little furry ones and feathered ones, and scaled ones, to be blessed next Sunday. Movie with a Message. Kathy Crane is organizing that. Kathy, what is the movie this time?
Actually, Karen Hebel is organizing it this Friday, and it's the Pixar movie Inside Out.
If you have not seen it, it is one of the cleverest, funniest little videos, so I encourage you to come. And also, Inside Out. Inside Out. And everybody is encouraged to bring refreshments or little meal additions with you so that it can make a nice evening, both food and film. I want to acknowledge that today is Mother's Day. We are all celebrating that in one way or another, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. The yard sale is on the 24th of June. We will be having a yard sale out in our park. I'm out in our parking lot, and you're encouraged to sign up for that as soon as possible because the spaces are filling up. Essentially what that is we will pull our cars in there and unload our wares, and we'll be advertising to the community to come and buy all of our stuff. And a percentage of the sales will go to the fellowship. The program council was scheduled to meet today. It is being changed to May 28th. Finally, it is my joy to welcome those folks who are visiting with us this morning. I would like to invite you, if you are willing to do so and able, to stand and to introduce yourself, whether you're visiting for the first time or multiple times. Please stand and introduce yourself.
Howard and Margaret Queens, we see an awful lot of very familiar faces. It's a pleasure to be back. Who knows how long we'll be here, but we're back. We're back.
Yeah.
And we felt very welcome this morning.
Yeah.
So much fun to be back.
They are wanderers, but every now and then they find us again. Anybody else?
Nathan after the service. Nathan after the service.
Oh, I'm going to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Anybody else who's visiting with us? Well, welcome to those of you who feel more comfortable staying in your chairs. I encourage all of you to come to the activity room, which is down the hall to the left, so that we might have an opportunity to welcome you as we enjoy refreshments and coffee. We will open this morning, I have to introduce our speaker. And I don't have the printout, so I'm just going to wing it here. Is that okay, Nathan? Nathan is our visitor, our speaker today, Reverend Nathan, and I'm not going to remember your last name. What is your last name? Woodliff-Stanley. Nathan is a minister at the Charleston Fellowship, and he is the executive director for SCUJA, the South Carolina UU Justice Alliance. Of something that our fellowship is very much involved with Holly and with Kathy Crane. And you've been very generous in supporting that organization. I think I heard Nathan say that we were one of the first congregations in South Carolina to buy into the work that you're doing. So thank you very much for that, and we look forward to hearing from you this morning. Nathan also gave us a gift this morning of a new hymn. The words will be here. You shouldn't miss them. And the name of it is Circle of Love. Now, Corey is going to play through it one time since we are not familiar with the tune, and then you'll join in the second time around.
Inside the
celebrating that gift that Nathan has given us this morning. Our opening words are focused on mothers, whatever kind of mother or mothering you do. It's written by Lisa Bovee Kemper, and this is an excerpt from it. There is no human being that is not connected to or disconnected from a mother. And so we honor the complexities of experience, writ large in the flowered platitudes, but here in this place laid bare, honoring the truth in each of our hearts. There is room for all in this circle. If you have carried a child or children, whether or not they came to be born, we see you. If you have chosen not to continue a pregnancy or have partnered with someone in an abortion, for whatever reason, under whatever circumstances, we see you. If you have fervently wished to have given birth to a child and the circumstances of fate made it impossible, we see you. If you love children we cannot see, whether because of death or estrangement, we see you. If you are happy to mother other people's children as an educator, an auntie, or a foster parent, we see you. If you had no mother at all, we see you. If your mother is or was your best friend, we see you. If your gender says you are not a mother and yet you take on the role of nurturer, we see you. If you wonder whether your mothering has been good enough, we see you. And if yours is a different truth altogether, we honor your unspoken story. There is room for all in our circle of life. May it be so today and always.
Will Maya please come up to light the chalice? Thank you. Oh, this went out. It's not on. It's not lit. It's going to burn out again? Okay, here, how about this?
Oh, yeah, it's out of oil.
How about you light it off? I'll do this and you... There.
Burnt out. It doesn't. We need new oil for that thing.
We sure do. So let us, as Maya lights the chalice, do so with the words in your order of service, our affirmation. We gather together in a spirit of love with justice as our guide. This is our chosen covenant to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth with freedom, and to care for one another.
Good morning. Good morning. What a beautiful day today, huh? Our story this morning is one that we thought was just absolutely perfect for Reverend Nathan's message this morning. It is called Love is Powerful by Heather Dean Brewer. Mari spilled her crayons onto the table. They made a messy rainbow. "What are we coloring, Mama?" she asked. Mama smiled. "A message for the world." Mari ran to the window and pressed her nose to the glass. Far below, people walked in different directions. Buses, cars, and taxis honked and rumbled down the busy street. Mari asked, "How will the whole world hear?" "They'll hear," Mama said, "because love is powerful." Mari climbed onto her Mama's lap. The crayons smelled sharp and new. Mama used one to write some letters. Even though Mama's words stretched across the poster, they would be too small for the world to read, Mari thought. Mari picked up a crayon. As she made her own sign, she imagined her friends in their apartments across the city, Grandma and Grandpa a plane ride away, and all the people in other countries. She wondered, how will the whole world see our message? Mama hugged her close. They'll see, she said, because love is powerful. Mama handed her a coat, and they both laced up their shoes. Mari tucked the posters under one arm and held Mama's hand with the other. They slipped through the elevator doors. Down, down, down they went, all the way to the lobby. Mari hopped onto the sidewalk, then stopped and looked up. The street was packed with people, more people than she'd ever seen in her entire life. Mari tugged on Mama's arm to ask her to kneel down. Then she whispered in Mama's ear, "Mama, it's so loud, and there's so many people. They won't hear our message." Mama said, "They will, little Mari." Mama lifted Mari up, and for a moment she felt like she was flying. On top of Mama's shoulders, Mari could see the crowd swell for blocks. Hundreds and thousands, even hundreds of thousands of people marching down the street. Some held signs like Mari's, all saying different things. Everyone cheered as they walked together. Mama joined them. Mari bobbed above the crowd like a canary fluttering over trees. She felt as tall as one of the buildings. Mari raised her sign for everyone to see. Even though she was small and the crowd very big, so big she didn't think anyone could hear, she called out her message. Through the roar, her voice was heard, and someone shouted the message back. Mari yelled again, and more joined in. Again, she yelled her message. This time, when the crowd called back, Mari's message rumbled down the street and echoed off the buildings. It was as loud as breaking waves. Love is powerful. This is a picture of the real Mari. When she was 6 years old, she went with her mother and some of her friends to the Women's March. From her mom's shoulders, she held up two signs that she had made. One said, "Be kind," and the other said, "Love is powerful." Just like in the story, Mari called out, "Love is powerful," and to her surprise, people nearby in the crowd repeated it back to her. Each time she called it out, more people joined in the chant until hundreds were calling out, "Love is powerful." In her note at the end of this book, Mari writes, "At that moment, I really felt its power. One voice can be heard, and one voice can make a difference. My advice to you is believe in yourself, be confident, and don't be afraid to speak up. And remember to speak up not just for yourself, but for other people too."
Here's Dave. There you are. I remember when you said something in the service you were involved in, not to follow something that's sad, but also to follow somebody that's joyful. I'm crying, sorry. Now is the time that we set aside each service to collect the offering of food and your other resources of cash to support the work of this fellowship and also our work that's out in the community. Kids, if you'd like to come up and help us collect the food, and thank you. We have a lot of joy and some sorrow to share with you this morning. Karen Hebel shares a joy. As a welcoming congregation, we recognize May 17th as International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia to raise awareness of violence, repression, and discrimination against the LGBTQ community worldwide. Would you place a stone for that? We are delighted to hear that Ellen Few is recuperating at home from her knee surgery. Andy Nelson has a sorrow. Please keep our cousin Chris in mind, a professor of Florida at Florida Gulf Coast University, who can no longer use the word slavery in his classes. Michael Smith, concern for relationship discussion. I'm sorry, Michael? Sorry? Decision. Thank you, Michael. Sarah Summers and John Hoskins, what a wonderful day we had with the hula hike. Hiking at Panther Town Saturday. I have a personal joy that I'd like to share. I spent the day yesterday celebrating my granddaughter's graduation from Meredith College and her 21st birthday. So it was a very special day with cocktails. And finally, Day has lots of joy to share with us. At first, I thought it would be a sorrow this morning, this Mother's Day, having lost my mom some time ago. But it is a joy instead. I'm happy to be getting acquainted with UU folks in this area. I'm happy that the members of my online I knew I was going to fumble over this one, Neuro-Indigenous group. Did I say that right, Day? Okay. Susan and Kirsten will be watching the service and are with me in spirit today. And I'm very happy that my beloved life partner and spouse, Terry, is here with me in this day. She's granting me a birthday wish. So we also have a birthday to celebrate. In honor of these happinesses in dedication towards social justice, I'm including a 53-year-old contribution with my card of joy, wishing you all happiness. This is from Day. And for all of those joys and concerns that we are holding closer to our hearts, or for those who are not with us today, we will add one more stone. Thank you. And now we'll sing the children to their classes. You ready to go, girls?
Let us center ourselves, Nazman. In a world so filled with brokenness and sorrow, it would be easy to lose ourselves in never-ending grief, to be choked by our outrage, to be paralyzed by the enormity of suffering, to feel our hearts squeezed tight with hopelessness. Instead, this morning, let us simply breathe together as we hold our hearts open, breathing in as our hearts fill with compassion, breathing out as we pray for healing in our world and in our lives, breathing in, opening ourselves to the transforming power of love, breathing out as we pray for peace in our world and in our lives, breathing in as we hold hope in our hearts, breathing out as we pray for justice in our world and in our lives. May we know our strength. May we be filled with courage. May our love flow from us into this world. Breathing out, we are the peace. Breathing in, we are the hope. Breathing out, we are the justice. May we know our strength. May we be filled with courage. May our love flow from us into this world. Amen. Blessed be. May it ever be so. It's quite a pleasure for me to be here with you this Mother's Day morning, to meet you in person, to meet some people I've only met on Zoom before in person, and to get to be in Clemson for the first time. As you know, I'm here as the executive director of the South Carolina Unitarian Universalist Justice Alliance. We call it SCUJA for short, which may be a somewhat unfortunate acronym, but it's better than saying the whole name every time. SCUJA was started in 2021 by the Reverend Dr. Pippin Whitaker in Columbia and the Reverend Dr. Jean Harriet in Aiken. Some of you may remember Reverend Jean from when she spoke here last March of last year, and I believe Pippin spoke here as well. Last summer, Reverend Pippin took a call to ministry in Georgia, and I ended up filling her role beginning last September, so I'm still in my first year of this. Reverend Jean continues to work with SCUJA as our Director of Training and Organizing. Personally, I have a background in social justice ministry as an ordained UU minister, working with nonprofit organizations in Mississippi and also in leadership at the ACLU of Colorado. Then moving to Charleston in 2021 when my wife Ruth became the first woman elected bishop of the Episcopal Diocese in South Carolina. For reasons you can imagine, I have a strong interest in interfaith organizing. The upper half of South Carolina is a separate diocese in the Episcopal Church, so we're actually not in her diocese here. But our work at SCUJA is statewide, although there are only 10 Unitarian Universalist congregations in the whole state. SCUJA is working with all 10 of these congregations, and I want to thank you here in Clemson for being one of the first congregations to sign a covenant with SCUJA to support our work for justice. Several of you have been personally involved with SCUJA, and as a congregation, I see your commitment to service and justice, including your work with Habitat for Humanity, resources for education, assistance to people experiencing homelessness, as well as your broader commitments around collective action on climate change, LGBTQ+ justice, anti-racism, and immigration rights. Congratulations on your call to the Reverend Holly Brown, who will bring their own commitment to justice when they arrive in August. I'm also grateful to Reverend Christina for her own support of SCUJA and for inviting me to come here this morning. Now, it may seem strange to have a sermon about social justice on Mother's Day, but it's actually more fitting than it might seem. Mother's Day was never intended to be just a once-a-year acknowledgement of mothers with flowers and cards. Not that there's anything wrong with celebrating mothers with flowers and cards. If you do that, that's wonderful. But there are some other things that are important to remember. One, as we heard just a little bit ago is that Mother's Day can be a sad or difficult or painful day for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons, including loss or complicated relationships to motherhood, or even just the fact that it's a gendered holiday. Another thing to remember is that the task of parenting in general, regardless of gender, and often mothering in particular because of cultural expectations, is an enormous task every day of the year, deserving of systemic support as well as personal gratitude. Parents, including mothers, have a special stake in many economic and social justice issues, from childcare and healthcare to gender equity, reproductive rights, education, and prevention of domestic violence and other forms of violence. In fact, the first Mother's Day proclamation was a Mother's Peace Day proclamation made by Unitarian poet and activist Julia Ward Howe. It is a proclamation for peace and against the violence of war. Julia Ward Howe was an ardent slavery abolitionist who wrote the words to the Battle Hymn of the Republic. But in her work with the Sanitary Commission, she also saw up close the carnage of war. With the Franco-Prussian War brewing in Europe, she had enough, and she made her Mother's Peace Day proclamation in 1870. "Arise, all women who have hearts," she wrote. "Our sons shall not be taken from us to unlearn all that we have been able to teach them of charity, mercy, and patience. From the bosom of the devastated earth, a voice goes up with our own. It says, 'Disarm, disarm.'" She went on to call for an international Congress of women in the interests of peace, and she inspired a series of Mother's Day of Peace events that continued for several years. It took the efforts of Anna Jarvis to make Mother's Day a national holiday in 1914, but the 1870 proclamation is still a reminder that the roots of Mother's Day run deeper than just sentimental good wishes to mothers. And the history of Mother's Day remains relevant in a world where, once again, there is a war of aggression in Europe and one with nuclear threats as well. Prior to this service, I learned that there's been a call for Mother's Day this year to be a national day of contemplation on gun violence. We've all seen the growing wave of school shootings and mass gun violence, and it is literally close to home for me, since I live just 4 blocks from Mother Emanuel AME Church in Charleston, where 9 members, including legislator Clementa C. Pinckney, were slaughtered by racist right-wing gun violence. We are one of only 2 states without a hate crimes law, but the South Carolina Senate failed again to pass the Clementa C. Pinckney Hate Crimes Act. Instead, the Senate sent a permitless gun carry bill to special session, one of their priority bills, which will only make it easier to carry guns into schools, churches, and other public places. At the State House last week, the most visible group opposing that bill was Moms Demand Action. So Mother's Day really is an appropriate day to talk about justice and activism. I've lived in the South before, and I love a lot about it, but after 2 decades working in Colorado, I'm sobered by how difficult it can be to work for justice here in South Carolina. I would love to be working on more positive reforms, but this year we have seen a wave of attacks on transgender youth specifically and LGBTQ+ rights generally, as well as attacks on abortion rights and reproductive freedom, on books and on teachers trying to teach accurate history about slavery and race, on voting rights, and on any reasonable regulation of violent weaponry. The response of SCUJA is to connect our 10 UU congregations, not only with each other, but also with national resources, such as national UU resources, such as Side with Love, the whole coalition of UU state action networks in other states, UU The Vote, Trust, Drum, Ministry for Earth, the UUFC, and several other UU justice groups. Then, we join forces with activist nonprofit partners here in South Carolina, including the League of Women Voters, the NAACP, ACLU, WREN, Planned Parenthood, Appleseed, SC United, and local interfaith groups, among many others. In the process, we want to connect with and root our work deeply in the people and communities impacted by injustice, centering their voices, listening to their stories, and following their lead. All of this works on the principle that we can do more together than separately. In the current political environment, we really need that collective power. I thought I would be speaking today after the end of this year's state legislative session, but instead we have a special session currently scheduled until May 31st. So we will continue working with our partners against the abortion bans, permitless gun carry, and whatever other atrocious bills they may plan to pass. It is at least heartening to see the activism, not only from moms, but from students and youth, as well as people who have been activists for many decades. I understand you've had some Clemson students here, which is great, even though they are off now for the summer. Your involvement in activism of people at all ages is very welcome and very needed. Of course, you don't have to come from a faith perspective to care about these issues. We have many secular partners working on the same things. So what is the significance of working for justice, specifically as Unitarian Universalists? Well, for me, working for justice is a form of ministry, rooted deeply in our faith, and it is a shared ministry that all of us can engage in together. I find that the stressful work of justice is more sustainable and often more fun when it is rooted in community that sings and worships together, that cares for each other even when we are in hard places, and that shares a vision of the kind of world that we wish to build. Now, just as our nation has aspirational values that we have never fully lived up to, we need to be honest about our Unitarian Universalist history, even when we have not lived up to our own ideals. But the call to justice is there in our faith, deeply rooted in Unitarian Universalist history, in our principles and values, and in our shared vision of beloved community. It is there in the Universalist vision of even heaven being a place of full inclusion. And it is there among the early Unitarians in 1820s Boston, where Joseph Tuckerman essentially became the first Unitarian community minister, advocating alongside people living in poverty and helping define the profession of social work. The history of UU ministry includes the story of Olympia Brown, the first woman ordained as a Universalist, Ethelred Brown, the first Black Unitarian minister, and more recently, the first openly gay and transgender UU ministers, James Stoll and Sean Dennison. There are lessons to be learned from the obstacles that they all faced and the challenges of making our faith and our world more genuinely inclusive. Justice is a central word in our current statement of principles and sources, where it appears 3 times. And it is one of the named values in the proposed Article 2 statement of UU values that will be voted on at the next General Assembly, in which love is placed at the center and an emphasis is added on anti-racism and beloved community. The simple welcome song that I wrote some 20 years ago that we sang earlier in the service is loosely based on our UU principles, mentioning compassion, justice, and the web of life. It's also a song about a circle of love. I'm reminded of a short poem from Edwin Markham that went like this. He drew a circle that shut me out, heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle and took him in. In a nation and world with so much hate, with so much disinformation, and so much division, I long for an inclusive love big enough to overcome and transform it all. I know the ultimate vision of our faith is not just victory over our opponents, but beloved community that is transformative for everyone. Still, welcoming and inclusion are harder than we might like them to be, not only in relation to those who oppose us or that may be difficult to love, but even for those we really believe we want to include. That's why Skuja recently offered a 6-week course on transgender inclusion for representatives of all of our congregations, and we're planning for racial justice programming as well. Whether the barriers are around race, gender, ability, or anything else, welcoming and inclusion require very intentional effort. In the meantime, as much as we wish for a world with less division and hate, it is worth our efforts now to hold the line as much as we can against policies that would take us backwards and divide us further here in South Carolina. While as a church we are legally barred from supporting or opposing political parties or candidates, we are allowed to encourage voting, to speak out on issues, and even to support or oppose legislation or ballot initiatives within limits that we fall safely inside right now. And of course, you can engage in partisan campaigns as much as you want as an individual. Many legislators, along with the media, tend to assume that there is one primary religious perspective. So it is especially helpful for them to hear our voices with a different message coming from faith-based activism. Legislators don't get as many calls as you might think, so it can actually matter when you contact them. Sadly, we're still not done with that for this year. Even when we don't succeed, we will keep working for justice, including on long-term efforts like Medicaid expansion, climate action, LGBTQ+ rights, prevention of violence, and many other forms of economic and social justice. And of course, the work of justice in South Carolina and in our UU congregations is not just about the State House. Local policies matter too, as illustrated by school boards that have become hotspots for book bans and censorship. We can vote when it is time to vote. And in support of justice, there's a lot we can do simply to keep learning and growing as individuals and as congregations, from book reads to direct involvement with the communities around us, especially those that most feel the effects of injustice. Regardless of what happens in the legislature, we can still provide justice-oriented ministry and care in our own communities. Even if they pass censorship bills, we can teach honest history and read inclusive books. If they pass abortion bans, we can help people navigate their options when they need an abortion. If they attack immigrants or LGBTQ+ communities, we can do the hard work of becoming more genuinely inclusive and welcoming. If they do nothing about climate change, we can learn to live in more environment and climate-friendly ways. We can help provide for people without housing or health care, practice accountability by calling in rather than calling out, build interfaith relationships, and practice nonviolence in our lives. And anytime it feels like too much, we can care and support for one another. We can sing and worship and feel the joy of being together. It helps to know we are not alone. And that is true both in our congregations and statewide with an organization like SCUJA. Another thing SCUJA is working on is a plan for a statewide UU Fall Festival in Columbia on October 7th for any UUs in the state who want to come. I don't know if there has ever been a statewide UU gathering in South Carolina before, but we would like to see it happen, and it will be happening this year. We want to connect justice leaders across congregations on issue teams where there is enough interest, and we want to learn from each other as well, and learn from what similar state action networks are doing in other states. If you share your own stories and photos of what you're doing in justice work here in this congregation, we want to put that in our newsletter too. Love is powerful. We can do more when we are connected, and it's more fun as well. So thank you so much for your support for SCUJA here in Clemson. For SCUJA to make it in the long haul, we will need an ongoing base of support, both from congregations and from individual supporters, so it matters. If you have any questions about SCUJA, I will be staying around after the service, and I do have sign-up sheets for our newsletter and action list. You can also sign up or check us out on our website at scuja.org, SCUUJA.org. I've worked for justice in both secular and faith-based settings, and I'm glad to be doing it in a UU setting again. It gives deeper context to the work. Justice activism is a part of our faith tradition, and it's a form of shared ministry for all of us together, whether we are young or old, mothers or parents or not, longtime UUs or new to Unitarian Universalism. I like to think not just in terms of issues, but in terms of all of what we do moving us closer to beloved community, toward a transformed world in which everyone belongs, where division and hate do not have the final word, where love for truth and justice and all people and living beings is our deepest guide. I look forward to joining with you in the shared ministry of Skuja and this congregation in the months and years ahead. May it be so. And please, at this time, join in hymn number 298 in the great hymnal, Wake Now My Senses.
Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your vow. Giving, receiving as love shows us how. Wake now my reason, reach out to the new. Join with each pilgrim who quests for the true. Honor the beauty and wisdom of time. Suffer thy limit and praise the sublime. Wake now, compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Wake now my conscience, with justice thy guide. Join with all people whose rights are denied. Take not for granted a privileged place. God's love embraces the whole human race. Wake now my vision of ministry clear. Brighten my pathway with radiance here. Mingle my calling with all who will share. Work toward a planet transformed by our care.
As we extinguish our chalice, let us remember that the ministry of justice is shared ministry. So may we all join in it together. As always, but especially in honor of Julia Ward Howe on this Mother's Day, may we go in peace.